The grand missive, the encyclical phrase of YouTube video essays, a statement of parodic grandiloquence alongside death of the author, is the axiom all art is political. This staple food of left-wing analysis posits a simple truth. Art, by its nature as a human creation, is a reaction to and a product of political realities. William Shakespeare, working under the monarchy of Elizabeth I, depicted Henry V as a grand hero and Richard III as a vile rat. Such a broad-stroked definition is about as debatable as the law of universal gravitation, but its value as a lens for art analysis is not nearly as universal. The problem with the statement that all art is political is not in its value as a statement. It is true as a general reality of human life. Everything from assumptions a work of art makes about its viewers or the world, to which art gets financed and released, is political. The issue comes from how it's used, and how it affects the approach so many of us have with art. It allows us as adults to overindulge on children and young adult media. It dulls our artistic sensibilities, our ability to approach art inwardly, and it places art criticism on the terms defined by the anti-woke nonsense crowd. Politics as a category of human thought and action is remarkable in its flexibility. Snake-like, transitory, boneless, it contorts and fits itself into philosophy of historical magnitude, Plato, Hobbes, Marx, the movement of armies, assassinations, and the actions of the home. State of Siege and Jean Dielman 23 Quai du Commerce 1080 Brussels are films of equal political weight, equal concern for the impact of politics on human life, how indispensable politics are to existence at the scales of both a nation-state and a widowed housewife. However, both of these films present a core problem. They are challenging, non-commercial art films that invite complex discourse and make intellectual and aesthetic demands on viewers. These extra hurdles make discussion much harder. Jean Dielman is a feminist film by a feminist filmmaker, but its approach is too complex to be understood completely through introductory feminist theory. As political and theoretical as it is, as formally striking in its methodical depiction of the day-to-day life of a housewife, Chantal Akerman is doing more than polemics. Jean Dielman is intensely personal and moving as a narrative about a human being living through the extraordinary mundanity of everyday life. Akerman does this frequently in her body of work. Hotel Monterey is stunning. In its silence and lack of narrative, we are drawn to it formally. But as we watch, as we learn the layout of the hotel, we can practically smell it, its silence bringing out the cheap life within. You start thinking about places you've seen before. A cheap motel outside Pigeon Forge on down I-75. Perhaps the fictional spaces you've imbibed, the dusty western floors of Hotel Dusk Room 215. Rooms that exist in your memory, faintly. Wooden walls, running your hands along the texture, feeling the knot of an old oak tree. Perhaps you wish you looked at that space, absorbed it slowly, the way Akerman does, so that it's more than an image that blinks unsteady across your mind. Sometimes you draw a bath, and the smell is familiar, but not to anything in particular. Just something long ago. You wish you could remember what it was. Great art and great art culture invite and demand this introspection, a sense of the aesthetic separate from one's antenna for the political. However, under the right circumstances, by which I mean YouTube and social media, platforms that demand quick, fast turnaround and explosive marketable takes, all art is political as a truth can become a truth that dulls one's senses by elevating the most simplistic and shallow art to an equal plane with the most challenging and complex art. Cars is slop, but one's intelligence may be salvaged if Cars is approached as a human artifact, a product as dependent on political structures as Princess Mononoke. It's worth making a distinction here between analyzing art as art and analyzing art as a part of a political climate. Both have their place. Jack Saint's video, Oops, Disney's Car Did Eugenics, is a good video. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, or any other video that puts children's media and pop culture through political lenses. The issue arises in the aggregate, where both creators and viewers enter into a vicious cycle of creating videos and watching videos that stunt the collective development of our artistic culture. We all love things that are mainstream, or intended for children, or franchise fare. I love Godzilla, and Gundam, and Star Trek, and some people really love Star Wars, and I think that's great. I love 2/3 of the original trilogy, and there is a lot of depth that can be found in mainstream art and children's media. Mobile Suit Gundam 79 is a strong look at the traumatic stress of war and displacement, but it often paints in broad strokes for its younger audience. This isn't a problem. The show is effective, often evocative, and generally superlative in execution. But at the same time, to me as an adult, its depiction of politics and war, the behind-the-scenes corruption and ambition, is simple. Mobile Suit Gundam stirs me, but it does not challenge me personally or emotionally the same way the more mature Macross Plus does, or the longer, slower, and more emotionally complex Legend of the Galactic Heroes does. The politics and ethical questions of Galactic Heroes are much harder to chew through as an adult. As stories about warring space factions, Legend of the Galactic Heroes plays as a natural extension of Mobile Suit Gundam, in the same way that calculus is more complex than algebra, but algebra is itself as indispensable as calculus. Serious engagement with children's media is an important part of a healthy cultural diet, but only a small portion. An art diet is built on variety and a willingness to challenge oneself, and sometimes this challenge necessitates letting go of something that was once integral to us. Consider the Harry Potter controversy, or more specifically, the J.K. Rowling controversy. It's a multi-dimensional problem because, at once, J.K. Rowling is a vile human being, deserving neither financial success or happiness, a human with a worse use case than lead paint, but also, it's Harry Potter. Harry Potter has become a battlefield because people cannot let it go. A generation that was cheered as children for actually reading and is now stunted as adults for not reading beyond Harry Potter simply must play Hogwarts Legacy because that is the level we have culturally landed on. The artistic culture we have cultivated is one where it's normal for adults to dedicate themselves primarily to children and young adult media, with all art being political as a subtle, backdoor justification for a stunted culture. If all art is political, then a Hogwarts Legacy is as rich as Spec Ops: The Line. The Harry Potter films as nuanced as Apocalypse Now. The Harry Potter novels as complex as Heart of Darkness. Making 1 million hours of content fighting with right-wingers about Disney Star Wars is simply easier than, say, championing independent cinema. And through the lens of all art is political, there is little value in championing a film like The Miseducation of Cameron Post, when Star Wars is both easier to understand as a film for children and of equal artistic merit, as it found itself at the center of so much reactionary nonsense. This palatability of such artistic junk food makes it so easy to indulge, but the consequence of placing so much emphasis on highly accessible children's media is that it stunts our ability to not only understand and critique mature art, but for leftists, it also oversimplifies our political ideology. The application of highly complex Marxist theory or social theory to pop culture and children's media is easy to parody because of the mismatch in complexity. It promotes a surprisingly simplistic view of left-wing politics that shaves off the complexities of actual material realities. Part of this is because leftists in the West have been subjected to the same culture of consumption as conservatives, and art is framed just as much as a thing to consume as a Pepsi. Consuming or not consuming corporate drivel, if it's art and entertainment, gets elevated as a form of activism, even by those who correctly called out the social justice Pepsi commercial for being ridiculous. The right wing might currently produce very little of actual cultural value, but the left has let them set the conversation, and an art culture that squabbles over a lesbian kiss in the background of Star Wars or Lightyear is not a healthy artistic culture. This is the type of art viewership and criticism that centers the slop line productions of major corporations and is fought out on Steve Bannon's terms, and the fight itself does very little to advance the rights of queer people. The benefit of talking about mainstream media, Marvel movies, Disney movies, Pokemon, Star Wars, is that the potential audience is much greater. Children's media, curated by parents and driven by a forceful invisible hand, is seen by viewers before they have a chance to diverge from the commercial status quo. A giallo gore hound is just as likely to have seen The Lion King as a golden age science fiction enthusiast. From a messaging standpoint, from a, dare I say it, propaganda standpoint, the dissemination of political thought is much easier when your base is greater. You will, with or without a sense of irony, have greater success polemicizing over a Marvel film than over an Ingmar Bergman film. This is true across all fronts of the culture war. Right-wing rage-bait YouTubers, defined by their simple-mindedness, their debatable literacy, and junk historical knowledge, are always Little Mermaid this and Disney Star Wars that, and spend almost no time talking about the art house, the indie scene, or anything outside the sliver of major releases with huge marketing pushes and recognizable brand IP. Why was Assassin's Creed Shadows controversial for featuring a black protagonist? It wasn't because of the historical accuracy that they pretended to not know. It was because of the name, Assassin's Creed. That name makes it a useful tool for the propaganda of reactionary losers. The temptation, from me and from a lot of people, is to own the right, to name and shame them through a meticulous breakdown of all the silly shit and incorrect nonsense they say about art, culture, and entertainment. This video had its origin as a response to The Critical Drinker. A look through any number of his clip shows and breaking down how he masks his own ignorance on cinema by overwhelming the viewer with clips from movies that are old and act as a shorthand for whatever claim he is making about modern movies sucking. I chose not to do that video because watching The Critical Drinker gives me the collywobbles, and also because it would do nothing but serve as a way for me to say, I watched Heat and Collateral and Shaft and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly better than he did. The purpose of his editing style is to make the clips irrelevant outside of their political purpose. To prove each individual clip wrong misses the forest for the trees. It isn't about whether or not Stanley Kowalski is a ideal portrayal of a man. It's that in an isolated, out-of-context clip, he looks masculine. And honestly, this approach ignores a very uplifting undertone that exists within every Critical Drinker video, within every depressing quartering rant, within every YouTube diatribe of go woke, go broke, within every wall of useless, pitiful shit behind a Geeks and Gamers podcast. There is a hollowness beneath the din. Peel back the layers of outrage, and you see nothing. The actual cinematic knowledge of The Critical Drinker is non-existent. Pull the curtain back on his Gish Gallop editing style, and you'll find nothing but make-believe. A weaponization of all art is political to turn his mindless consumption of mainstream cinema and Twitter takes and rage bait into a political message. But that is the point. By reducing films down to their political components, to the representational politics that he hates, The Critical Drinker becomes knowledgeable enough for his analytical lens. So, I had to ask the question, is it worth actually talking about how much he doesn't know? Imagine responding to the validity of a quartering rant. The quartering is a foolish, buffoonish, ignorant, boob-made man, an applesauce brain content creator. What on earth would anyone ever get from meticulously owning him in the marketplace of ideas? Everything he says is obscenely stupid. All you would get from that kind of exposure is a horrific gaze into the abyss of a human id.
My wife went out for pizza without me, and I'm angry about it. So I'm going to win this round, and I'm going to pee. If I don't win this round, I'm going to pee in my own basement.
In some way, the uselessness of turning art into political fights with right-wing YouTubers is exposed by the fallout of the second election of Donald Trump and the ascendancy of based, epic, dark, gothic, MAGA, meme lord, edgelord, divorce lord Elon Musk. It seemed, at first, as if right-wing cultural domination was inevitable, but it hasn't materialized. And it hasn't materialized because the right wing produces no culture. With a great thud, we saw that their wheelhouse was pablum. Even with the phantom of victory on their side, Gamergates have multiplied and somehow become even sillier. Rage content about black characters and trans characters and the gay agenda and body type character creators continues with a million years of AI images of what hot women really look like. Despite electoral victory, nothing has changed. All these goons are still behaving the same, lashing out every day at the existence of black people and trans people in video games with the same embarrassing toddler tantrums.
I'm gonna be straight up. You can have one different race character in a fantasy universe if it's especially explained through lore. I mean, I've
never had sex.
To be fair to conservatives, it's not that conservative artists can't make art. James Woods exists, Ingmar Bergman existed, and Clint Eastwood is a highly respected artist and also a deep conservative. Gran Torino is a conservative film, a story of an old man discovering model minority myth, and while the film is informed by Eastwood's conservative politics, it also challenges the trope of the quiet macho American hero that Eastwood himself helped popularize for a modern age. Even if his conclusions are ultimately conservative, he is challenging himself as an actor, the tropes and myths he's built around his art, and even challenges some conservative ideals. Gran Torino ends with Eastwood cutting his immediate family out of his will and leaving his hot ride to Tao, a Hmong teenager who he grew close to in his final months. Wow. Did Eastwood just cut his white family out and leave his car to an Asian American? Gran Torino challenges the conservative view of family as a nuclear, isolated, racially homogenous unit, and redefines family as a web of emotional connections rather than name and bloodline. Eastwood challenges himself as a person and artist with Gran Torino in a way that you just do not see from Daily Wire films or Glenn Beck novels. Even though art often serves political purposes and is frequently informed by the artist's politics, and artistic culture, a culture that can win a culture war, requires artists that are imaginative, inward dreamers, driven by that ethereal voice that compels the artist to create and to question. When the extent of one's thoughts is anger at a black man in Assassin's Creed, or a black woman in The Little Mermaid, or LGBT characters existing at all, then one cannot build a rich artistic culture. The promise of Grums, a good friend of mine, we DM all the time, I call him Goondog, is that if we put games back in the hands of gamers, uncensor John Stellarblade, get rid of purple hair and women from Wolfenstein, and crush the woke agenda, then games will be back. What games? What are the games? Where are the games, Grums? I'm looking for the unwoke games, please. Now, if you're looking for the woke games and want to find the woke games, consider supporting this channel on Patreon or here on YouTube as a YouTube member. All patrons and members get access to the Game Club Discord server, where we play a game together each month and meet up and discuss it. We just wrapped up playing the Legend of Zelda Oracle games and Adventures of Lolo, and are about to embark on Hideo Kojima's visual novel Police Knots. Patrons and YouTube members also get early access to video scripts and exclusive essays. The names you see on screen are the supporters on Patreon and YouTube that make this channel possible. I look forward to seeing you both in the credits and in the Game Club. YouTube and Twitter outrage merchants have no culture because they create no art. They have no inner curiosity. The presence of conservative messages and conservative casting decisions is the extent. This is the outer limit of the statement that all art is political. Art made entirely as a political tool is not art, because while all art is political, no art is completely political. On the artist end, and on the viewer end, art engages the inner self, and the construction of a robust artistic culture requires us to interrogate ourselves, to question what we think, what we believe, what we feel, why we feel it, and how we see those beliefs manifest in the world and our art. An aspect of this essay I grappled with each word swept from my fingertips, is the contradiction inherent to the very existence of these 3,000 words. I myself have indulged, with glee, in analysis of children's media. My Pokemon videos are the greatest algorithmic successes I have. Go figure. The platform we work with promotes discussion of the lowest common denominator. We cannot ignore the influence of right-wing anti-woke nonsense on the internet, but we must also avoid it? How do we balance that? I myself scanned their videos for footage and clips while also saying we cannot let them control the conversation. Perhaps this is the point. The contradiction, the tension between form and content, the tension between indulgence and ignorance, this is perhaps the great aesthetic power of art. Irony as a dramatic device is so powerful because it revels in contradiction, in tension. Danganronpa is a puerile, vile little game. One of its cases tells a story that is a sad tale of gender identity and gender roles, but that also comes off as deeply transphobic with the bodily disgust the game has for a character whose gender identity and gender expression are, by social expectations and norms, mismatched. What are we supposed to do with that? When I streamed Danganronpa, I had people in chat talking about how the story brought peace to their struggle with gender. Other people said that it was insulting to their identity, that it reinforced negative stereotypes that have hurt them. What are you supposed to do with those two truths? I don't know what to do with that. Knowing whatever politics or whatever social climate led to Danganronpa does not solve that contradiction. Perhaps that's okay. No matter what the cause is, we must sit with it. We must sit with two things that don't seem to make sense with each other. We use it to talk to ourselves, to learn about ourselves, and to learn about others in the same social circle who have reacted very differently to the same text. All art is political cannot come to mean that there are easy answers to easy questions. It cannot also be used as a way to beat down the uncomfortable and necessary act of conversing with oneself through art. The culture war has, in a way, already been won by the left. There is no depth, no intrigue, no art being produced by the right wing that cultivates any kind of culture beyond the feeling of owning the libs by watching the new norm, a feeling that cannot sustain a human mind.
I just want normal beer.
For all of my issues with what we choose to talk about, for the constant discourse around slop trash and young adult fiction, left-tube video essays are frequently, well, scripted, edited, or set dressed in a complex way. These videos are not off the cuff, reaction bait in front of a wall of landfill filler. Many people in the same space are artists beyond the video essay. Writers, filmmakers, artists. Perhaps all we have to do is remember that the job of the critic isn't just to discourse about popular X, Y, and Z, but to champion art, especially art without mainstream backing, to develop a mature and complex global art culture that encourages self-reflection beyond pattern recognition politics.